Welcome to my sewing room, my special place for creativity. I sometimes stop and treat myself to a cup of tea when I feel I have completed the sewing for the day. One of the tea accessories that I really love is the tea cozy. When embellished with beautiful stitches, it serves not only to keep my tea hot, but also it's a beautiful decorative accessory that I enjoy displaying. French knots that create beautiful texture appear to be complicated, but today you will find a simple way to complete this wonderful stitch. I can't wait to get started. I think you are going to have so much fun today. The first technique we're going to do is called creative applique, and it's so fun and so easy. This beautiful suit has the creative applique with little 1-inch squares on the collar. It has a shell underneath it, and you notice the use of all different kinds of buttons. That adds just a little extra pizzazz. Look at this wonderful border with the creative applique squares that goes all the way around the bottom of the jacket. More of the wonderful creative applique on the sleeves of the jacket. And I left these two buttons unbuttoned so I can show you the shell. The bottom of the shell has a really beautiful trim. Now the straight skirt that goes with this suit has that wonderful trim at the bottom and then little pleats of the self fabric. Let's see how easy it is to make this creative applique. First of all, we're going to use a fusible interfacing, and sometimes you can get this that already has a grid on it, but if you don't, just draw your grid on there. Okay, these are 1-inch grids, and I'm going to have to cut my pieces of fabric 1.25 inches because I want them to overlap. I've lined my pieces of fabric up along the grid line, which means it extends a little bit higher on the top, and when I bring the second piece in, it will extend, there it went. It will extend over the first piece. Now I use one of the little tiny irons, so I actually fuse each piece as I go along. All right, here we have the several pieces fused. You fuse them one at a time, and use that little bitty iron. You fuse them one at a time, so after you put your pieces. Now let me show you what happens with this piece when I come down to the next row. I'll line it up on the bottom, and you see it overlaps the first row. You've got to keep the fabric pieces lined up somewhere. Now this piece has already been placed and fused. It is all fused. By the time I place my last piece, it is fused. And then with a monofilament or an invisible thread, you zigzag over all of these stitches. You zigzag over all of the lines where these pieces are overlapped. Then here's where the fun comes in. Using all kinds of braids and trims, you're going to put it down and couch it once again with invisible or monofilament thread, and you're going to couch all kinds of wonderful braids down. I'm so glad to have as my guest today my friend Charlotte Gallaher, who made this wonderful suit and who does all kinds of creative sewing. Charlotte, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha. It's fun to be here. We're going to create our own fabric out of little squares, and to make it easier for you to see today, I've used 2-inch squares, actually cut 2 1/4 for the top of the bottom that was used on the bottom of the jacket. My grid is on fusible interfacing. If you can't find gridded interfacing already, you can just draw your lines yourself. First you place your first square, line them up with 2 sides of your grid, and then fuse it in place. You need to do this each time you place a piece of fabric because you don't want them to shift on you. Then you take your second piece, and you can either do it randomly or have them in a particular order. Match your lines, fuse, and pick up your next piece. This little mini iron makes it really a lot simpler. Then I'm going to take another color. You need an ironing surface, and these little quilt mats work really great for that. Once the pieces are fused, I have this piece completely fused in place. And we're going to take monofilament thread and stitch over all the edges. Let me move my iron
hold
out of
that
the way.
iron. That's a little bit hot. Okay.
Yes. I'm going to zigzag over these edges with the monofilament thread using a narrow stitch. Stitch all this in one direction, then stitch in another, the horizontal and then the vertical.
You stitch all the horizontal first and then all the vertical? Okay.
Yeah. Once you have all the edges stitched, then you're going to go and couch over each of these lines using a slightly wider stitch than your cord. And I'm also going to switch feet and use an applique type foot so it'll ride better. And you don't want to stitch into your cords, you just want to stitch over them.
I think that's where the fun comes in, when you start putting all of those pieces together and then those wonderful cords.
You can also use, instead of the monofilament, if you want to use a decorative thread, you can use that to finish, which is what I used on this Christmas stocking. I used different reds and greens on it to stitch it down.
To give it that little shine. Oh, Charlotte, it is so beautiful. I absolutely love this suit and love the technique, and it is easy, and I think that's one of the things I love, is when it's fun and easy. Charlotte, thank you so very much. And now we have some sewing inspirations that Charlotte has brought to share with you. Charlotte, I just love what you have done using the technique you just shared with us in these wonderful bright colors. Tell us a little bit about this.
This is the same technique that I've used on the pockets that we just demonstrated. And the difference in this is a 1-inch square, but it's used on point for the pockets to give it a little bit more definition.
And this adorable little purse that goes with it.
Right.
And you know what? I think you said this is the same technique. Is that correct?
Right. It's just not done in squares. It's done with strips of ribbon. This is all, the bottom hem is all ribbons, and then the body of the jacket is a moire decorator fabric, actually.
And the collar has those beautiful ribbons too. Charlotte, is so pretty. Now tell us about this gorgeous jacket.
This jacket is quilted with heart shapes that are machine quilted, and then I quilted the rest of it using a technique with a hand by machine that gives you a hand look by adjusting my tension and using monofilament thread too.
And Charlotte, it really does look like hand stitching. As a matter of fact, I thought, now Charlotte, wait a minute, is this hand stitching?
Right.
Because I know you love the machine.
Right.
Oh, this adorable purse. Now, what did you say the name of this purse is?
Flip flap.
Flip flap. Okay, show us these different flaps. I'll hold it while you flip and flap.
Okay, each section has another flap. This is a little cell phone pocket. Then you can flip this piece back. You have 2 inside pockets, and then you can flip the back piece over for extra security, and there's another pocket on the on the back of it.
Listen, let's just take it off. Let me hold it. Then there's another pocket on the back. No pockets on the shoulders. How cute that is. So you can just flip and flap any way you want to. This adorable purse. That is so creative. Now, let's go to the jacket, since I have another hand to hold it with.
This were embroidery designs that matched the fabric. This fabric was actually purchased like that. And then I created also the quilting design in the background in a large hoop and did the embroidery on it to match.
And look at the sleeves, how they're
cut down.
That's almost like is this the same technique we just did?
Right.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. And this is completely fascinating to me. I think our audience would love to know about this, what looks like hand-done crochet, but it isn't, is it?
No, it's a 12-weight thread, and it's a series of about 6 different stitches done on the machine with water-soluble thread, and then you wash it out, and you have this edging to create. And I used it a little bit narrower, not so many layers of the stitch on the collar.
Charlotte, absolutely beautiful things. Thank you so much. And now we have a scrapbooking idea for you. Charlotte, I cannot wait for you to share your wonderful creative ideas on scrapbooking.
Thanks, Martha. This first sheet I have is my grandson, Dylan, who we think is going to be the next Major League Baseball pitcher star. And I've used purchased paper that's very colorful in the background. And then this year he was on the All-Star team, and he had his picture done that looks like a player's card. And then this is a picture of his team that won the All-Star tournament that year, and they were receiving their trophies. Then I cut out a little baseball out of white fabric and used stitches on the sewing machine to illustrate the stitching. This one is a picture of my mother and her sister, and I've done crazy patch around the whole thing. And it's embellished further with laces, trims, and lace motifs that have been dyed. The first thing you want to do is create any pictures on cardstock, have them printed, and then I used the picture as my first piece to put down, so I cut it out 5-sided. I attached it to the paper stabilizer. It has a stabilizer underneath with temporary adhesive spray to hold it in place, and then it's stitched with pin stitch, and then I put a second piece down and used another decorative stitch. My third piece that I put down, I stitched with monofilament thread, and then you can add laces or ribbons or trims on top of that, whatever you would like. Then you put down your next piece, and I'm going to stitch it with monofilament thread, cover the previous 2 pieces you've stitched with.
Now, Charlotte, are they butted up, or are you going to overlap?
You can butt them, or if they're a little bit thicker, you might want to just use slightly overlap, as long as they're not too thick.
And you're sewing right through the 2 layers of paper, and then
just like
your
you do
background
in
paper.
regular patchwork, crazy patch. And I use a stabilizer to hold them together.
Stabilizer underneath the piece of scrapbook paper. What kind of stabilizer did you use?
It's just another piece of paper.
Okay.
You can use like a poly mesh stabilizer, like you would use in embroidery. And once that's finished, then you're going to apply your next piece of fabric, which will also cover those, and stitch it down. Then I added embellishments to these seams.
You stitched
and
all those?
Stitched all these down, and I added also a collar around to finish off the edges of the picture.
Oh, Charlotte, that's crazy patch with paper.
Paper.
Oh, Charlotte, thank you so much.
Thanks.
And now I have a home decorating project for you. I have the most exciting and the most beautiful technique to share with you for a wonderful pillow for your bed. You can make it in any different size. Now just take a look if you want to see something gorgeous. This is silk charmeuse, which probably is the best feeling fabric I have ever felt in my life. You just hold it and it's just wonderful. These are folded tucks that have been gathered. So this is a folded tuck pillow, and then wonderful rayon lace, which is around it. This is an ecru silk charmeuse. Now this looks so elegant, and it is so elegant, but of course you know and I know it's easy to do. Now remember, this is silk charmeuse. These are folded tucks which have been gathered. I might say that you need to use a polyester thread. Do not use your heirloom cotton thread on this, because we need a stronger thread to be sure we don't pull the threads out when we gather those tucks. And also we're going to loosen the upper tension to 2.5 or to 2. All right, let's see how this is done. I already have some done for you here. These are folded tucks, not pin tucks. We weren't able to actually pull the thread on pin tucks, so it didn't work. So here we have a folded We fold it back, and it's very slippery. Oh, it feels so good. Anyway, you fold it back so we have folded tucks, and then we'll come over, and I'm not going to really sew the whole thing for you, but I'm going to show you what I have done. I have moved my needle position to the right where I get the width folded tuck that I'll sew a little bit, where I get the width I want by just following, letting the fabric run right along the edge of the foot. Anyway, that's how I'm doing my folded tucks. Okay, now let me show you how to gather them. Let me get back over here. I then pull, remember the upper tension was loosened, so I pull the thread on the tuck, and you pull them just a little bit at a time, and remember to use that polyester thread because that means the thread won't break. I love heirloom thread, cotton thread. I use it all the time in heirloom sewing, but on silk, and when you're going to pull these gathers, I have used a polyester heavier thread. Now I'm going to pull them along one at a time, just scoot it along, and then when I really get ready to space it, when all of them have been pulled, I'm going to pull them out. Be sure those gathers are distributed evenly after I pull the whole pillow. You can even use a lace shaping board and stick pins in the board. And I also, when I distribute gathers, I tend to pull them like this to be sure. It's kind of like puffing. You know, you have to straighten it out a little bit. This is really just a new variation on puffing. Now, making the pillow is very easy too. First of all, pretend like this is all those beautiful gathered tucks, okay? Pretend like we have all these gathered tucks on this piece of fabric. I'm going to put a piece of linen or muslin behind them. Now don't fuse it to it, but just put it behind it to stabilize it. I'm going to also, on the back of the pillow, I'm going to put the same piece of linen or linen cotton blend or muslin, whatever you want to use to stabilize it. Then I'm going to put the pillow top to the pillow back, sew it together, stuff it with polyfill, close it up, and then adding this gorgeous rayon trim around the edge, I'm going to run a gathering thread through this and gather it to go around the edge. Let me bring my pillow. And by the way, let me share one more thing. When you're turning a corner on any kind of gathered lace, in other words, around the corner of this pillow, be sure you have lots of fullness. I don't care what type of lace you're using, from, maybe a couple of inches back to a couple of inches, maybe an inch and a half over. If you don't, it will cup under, and that is not the look you want. All right, you make your pillow completely, finish it, and then you butt the gathered lace up to the edge and zigzag it to the edge. That way you won't lose any of the pretty lace. And by the way, that's a very easy way to add lace to the edge of any pillow. And next I have some really beautiful hand embroidery for you. I'm so happy to have as my guest today Beverley Sheldrick from New Zealand. Beverley is a regular contributor to Sew Beautiful magazine. She has taught needlework all over the world, and she teaches regularly at the School of Art Fashion in Huntsville. Beverley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. It's always just so good to be here with you. Now, Martha, today for our viewers, I'm going to show them some simple ways with French knots. It's such a wonderful stitch, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And easy.
And easy. And there's so much we can do with it. Now, when you're doing French knots with silk ribbon, it's always just the one wrap. Don't be tempted to try and put any more because you'll have an awful mess. So just remember. Now, you can see here on this tea cozy, we're going to start here with these little spring bulbs here. They're very simple. Then we've got the hyacinths, which are here, the poppies up here, and last of all, the little forget-me-nots. And these are just a few ways that you can use French knots in a creative manner. Now, I'm just going to show you here. You will see that here I have these little bulbs. Here I've got the hyacinths, the poppies, which are here, and then last of all, just a couple of these little French knots. And normally, of course, you would have a number of clusters of them to make them look really good, but they're very effective. Now, I'm just going to show you what I've done here, which is really very, very simple. You can see how I've already put in one of the leaves there. I'm just going to put in a second one there, just a flattish straight stitch, or it doesn't matter. You can see I did a ribbon stitch there. It really doesn't matter what you do. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a pistol stitch, which, as we all know, is just a French knot which is on the end of a stalk. So here we are, put it like that, in we go, and pull it through. Now you'll also see that I did one each side, and I think they look better if we've got 3, so we're just going to put this one in here and on we'll go. We're not going to put in that 3rd one because you can see what happens there. So there we are, there's the first one. Now here we are with the hyacinths. You can see how I've got one a little shorter than the taller one here, and again I did do a ribbon stitch here. Don't be tempted to have too wide a space. I'm just going to take this one through like this, and then you will see that I've already put some of these knots here, and I'm just wobbling these from a little bit from side to side as I come down to give it a little bit of extra width here like this, and we're just going to keep on going until we've filled the whole of this section. You can see when you look at it here that I've brought them right the way down, and I've got just a little tiny one down the bottom there. Now the poppies I think are very effective, and I've done them in 7mm ribbon, and you can see here it is, this lovely wide ribbon. I'm just going to do my French knot, and when I put this in, instead of pulling it tight as we would normally, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to leave it very loose. So you can see how sloppy that is on the needle. Now when I take that through, you'll see how it is there, and sometimes you have to just coax them a wee bit so that they do as you want, and then you're going to, because they're very unstable at this point, we're now going to bring a piece of floche or a piece of stranded cotton, just whatever. I think I've probably got a piece of number 8 pearl here, and I'm just going to wrap this twice, and I'm going to hold this exactly where I want it to be, and they really are, I think, very effective. Now the last one is just very simple. You can see already that I've put in some of these, and I usually put a clump of about 5. That seems to work very well. Don't try to do them in the same size. Have some, you'll have perhaps like this, and the next one might be more like that. So you can see I've already put in 3 there, and here we go. We'll put in another one there, and we're going to come up and put in another one there, and then I'll have another clump which will be quite close to it. So there we are, we're like this. Make them all just slightly different shapes. And of course for the leaves I just like to put just a little short ribbon stitch like that, and of course always remember to put your thumb hard up against the needle to give you a nice point on the end of your little leaf. It looks like a leaf like that.
Beverly, thank you so much for these wonderful silk ribbon stitches, and I'll look forward to having you again on the show.
Thank you, Martha, so will I.
And now won't you join me while I share a wonderful piece of vintage clothing with you? This adorable little girl's coat, I can just imagine, was made for her Easter coat. It is so precious. It has Lily of the Valley embroidery mixed in with ribbons, and this, by the way, is made by hand. Don't you just love this huge collar? And there's a real interesting sewing technique. I undid the snaps. In order to hold this collar in place, this mother did put snaps so it wouldn't just flop around when the little girl wore it. This beautiful wide waistband and these wonderful antique round buttons. Oh my, how I would love to be able to get some of those little covered buttons today. Now something real interesting about the lining, let me show, or the hem, let me show you. This mother obviously had children of different heights, and she needed to lengthen this coat. So she used another kind of fabric, and actually you can even see the line, but probably not on TV, but you can even see the line where it has been length of the hem was let down, but she lined it in another fabric to get some more wear out of the coat. Isn't that a great idea? Now the back is absolutely beautiful too. It has more of the bows, the ribbons that run around it, the lily of the valley, and also the beautiful buttonhole scallops and the wonderful wide belt, and even has the beautiful embroidery on the sleeves. Another little touch of the bows and the lily of the valley. What a magnificent coat. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'd like to invite you to come back next time.